Good evening, everyone. My name is Jo Ratali, and I'm the Assistant Director General of Collections here at the National Library. It is my pleasure to welcome you this evening. Tonight, we're diving into something truly special, a project that stretches our imaginations far beyond our own lifetimes. Future Library is one of those rare ideas that makes you pause, breathe, and think about time differently. To begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land, the Ngunnawal people. I acknowledge their ongoing connection to the land and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and through them to all First Nations people here tonight or listening online. As a meeting place, Canberra has been the cradle of numerous stories, a country of creativity. The Ngunnawal and First Nations peoples across Australia have been keepers and sharers of stories and histories for millennia, and this is a legacy the library continues to follow today. I also want to acknowledge our collaboration with the Royal Norwegian Embassy, with whom we are partnering to deliver tonight's program. We are joined tonight by Mr. Erik Favelle, Deputy Head of Mission, and many esteemed representatives, and we thank you for introducing us to this remarkable project and your support in sharing it with our audience. Future Library began in 2014 with a forest planted in Nordmarka, just outside Oslo. Those trees are growing right now, and in 2114, they'll become the paper for 100 manuscripts that no one alive today, bar the authors, have ever read. 12 years in, we're still at the very beginning of this century-long artwork, and therein lies the magic. We're incredibly fortunate to have with us Beate Hovind, the producer and creator of Future Library, the person who has steered this project from a bold idea into a living, breathing cultural landmark. Beate works at the intersection of art, architecture and public space, and she has a real gift for creating projects that unfold slowly and meaningfully over time. In conversation with Anne is Kathryn Favelle, who many of you will know from her long career here at the library. Kathryn has spent decades talking with writers, readers and thinkers, making her the perfect person to help us explore the many wondrous layers of this project. Over the next hour, we'll talk about what it means to write for readers who won't be born for another century. We'll touch on trust, stewardship and imagination, as well as the climate crisis that makes this project feel even more urgent. And of course, we'll hear about the extraordinary writers who've contributed so far. Margaret Atwood, David Mitchell, Han Kang, Ocean Vuong, Alif Shafak, to name just a few. So let's settle in, let our minds stretch a little and enjoy this chance to think about literature not just as something we consume, but something we can pass forward. Before we begin, please welcome Erik Favelle to say a few words on behalf of the Royal Norwegian Embassy.
Thank you very much, Jo. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me also to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It is a great pleasure for me to represent the Royal Norwegian Embassy tonight at the National Library. I'm very excited to learn more about one of the most remarkable literary projects of our time, the Future Library. Norway and Australia may be geographically distant, but we have a lot in common. In both our countries, literature is shaped by landscape, by vast spaces, by distance, and by a close relationship between people and nature. In Norway, writers have long explored life in remote communities and dramatic natural surroundings. In Australia, literature reflects equally powerful encounters with distance, climate, and place. In both traditions, storytelling becomes a way of understanding who we are and where we belong. Australia's greatest short story writer, Henry Lawson, captured the hardship, humour and humanity of life in the bush with a clarity that still resonates today. Less widely known, perhaps, is that Lawson had Norwegian roots. His father, Nils Larsen, was a Norwegian sailor who arrived in Melbourne in 1855 to join the gold rush. In 1866, he married Louisa Albury, an Australian poet, writer, publisher, and feminist. And Henry, whose surname was anglicised to Lawson when the parents registered the birth, was the eldest of their 5 children. This is a reminder that even the most national of literatures often contain threads that connect us across continents. And the Future Library project is a powerful example of connections across continents, cultures, and generations. On behalf of the Embassy, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Beate Hovind, the chair of the Future Library Trust, for having come all this way from Norway to share with us the concept and vision of the Future Library. She has been invited to be a guest at the Sydney Writers' Festival and graciously accepted the Embassy invitation to come to Canberra first to talk about this amazing project. And I would also like to thank Joe and the National Library team for their enthusiasm and wonderful efforts in organising tonight's event. Thank you very much and enjoy the evening.
In the forest, there is a city, and in the city, there is a library, the Future Library. The Future Library is an artwork that is going to unfold over 100 years, where each year from 2014, a writer is commissioned to write any piece, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, in any number of words, and it will not be read until 2114, when the books are printed from the pulp of the trees being grown in the forest. These trees that in time will be used to print these 100 texts. What a wild idea you had here, Katie Paterson.
When you plant trees, you're aware that it's something that's going to outlive you. And this art piece is really about an unborn generation and trying to make a place for them. Besides Margaret Atwood, for the past 10 years, you and many other international and celebrated writers agreed to participate in my wild idea. Why did you want to do this, Margaret, as the first writer of this art project?
This is a letter to the future. We assume that people will still be around, that they will be able to read, that they will still be interested in reading, that there will still be a library. We don't know how the world will be with the climate and humankind, so this is a project that is immersed in hope and a cosmic sense of time. Think of this as cultural storage for the future.
That books are trees and libraries are forests.
And that this future could be beautiful.
Good evening, and isn't that a beautiful way to begin our introduction to the Future Library Project? I'm Kathryn Favelle, and welcome Beate to Canberra and to the National Library of Australia.
Thank you.
I love in this animation, which I encourage you to watch again because I have watched it many times now, both Katie Paterson, the artist, and Margaret Atwood refer to the project as a wild idea. And 12 years in, I think it's still a wild idea. I may have described it as a little bit bonkers to some people as I've been introducing them to it. But could you take us back to the very beginning of the project and tell us how it was conceived and how you managed to get people to say yes to it?
It's a long story, and I can't tell all the secrets, right? So,
well, you can. It's a quiet space. We won't tell you.
So I work in the construction business, believe it or not. So I've been working with the waterfront development in Oslo for many years. And so I work for the property developers, and part of the infrastructure that we built in a new transformation of a city in the waterfront are the public spaces. And with public spaces, there comes art. Mm-hmm. And in Norway, we tend to choose art, mus in bronze. So we didn't want these mus in bronze dropping down around in that waterfront development. We wanted something extraordinary. And I'm mentioning this because to commission mus in bronze is a funny thing because it's a lot of mus in bronze in Norway. But I think there are mus in bronze in all countries. It's the default choice when it comes to art in public space.
So that's sculptures.
Yeah, drop sculptures, we call them. Bloop. They come, they come like that. And so we wanted something extraordinary, and that is much more difficult. That's not the lazy way. So we were very much inspired by the opera roof in Norway, in Oslo, if you've seen that. It's a walkable roof. So we wanted the artist brief was, could you please create something that is inspired by that roof, because it's like a landscape. You have to slow down. It's non-commercial, it's public and open for everyone. And so that immersive kind of feeling is what we wanted the artist to propose. Mm-hmm. That's risky to do, because my board are the property developers. And when you are asking artists to work so freely, you never know what you get. And my job was to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So, of course, when Katie was asked to come to Oslo, she was there, she did a lot of research, and she called me and then she went back to Berlin. She lived in Berlin, like all artists did back then. And she called me after a week, and she said, I think I have a perfect idea for the waterfront development, but I need to stay in the forest first. Because I've never really lived in a forest. I come from the deep forest. Myself, I grew up on a farm. I know all about that. So I took her to a family cabin and placed her there for a week. And when she literally came out of that forest, she said, no, I'm going to tell you. And she said, it's going to last for 100 years. And I said, no. I'm not going to do that. And remember, property developers, they're very good in economy, risk management, and all that. And I knew if I had told them about the 100 years, they would have asked me to do a risk assessment. And nothing would have happened. So that's a learning point. Don't do risk assessments. Or think about risk in a different way. And I really mean this. Innovation, risks, is a totally different thing. Because the risk assessment in the construction business is to close all gaps, right? But when you work with innovation and artists, risk assessment is really about daring to keep the doors open as long as possible. Yeah. I've learned so much from working with art. So now you got that one. So so the 100 years, I couldn't even think about it. And then she said, we're going to grow a forest with 1,000 trees. If you look in a waterfront development, where can you buy land to grow a forest for an art project? But what Future Library and Katie, of course, taught me was that to think out of space and out of time. She was totally out of the concept. So when she proposed a forest growing, I had to stretch myself out of that waterfront development specific space, because surrounding Oslo is a forest that the politicians decided to buy more than 100 years ago for us that lives there, And beyond that, there is a privately owned big forest. So I was quite amazed by this publicly owned forest, because it's ours. And I felt like it's very much aligned with the work itself, that is ours, it belongs to us. So that's when I dared to go to that director in the municipality. And I had asked for a meeting, and he knew I was working with the waterfront development, so he was complaining about a lot of things. He was not very happy, and I was quiet, and then he said, "Didn't you ask for this meeting?" Yes, and said, "What do you want?" "Okay, I need a forest." And he said, after being quiet for a while, he said, "Why not? We need more why not people. That's when things happen." So he actually gave us that forest there and then. And that's when I started believing in this work to happen.
So can I ask what happened when you finally confessed to the board that you were talking about a 100-year project?
I'm not sure if I've done it yet, to be honest. I've never actually discussed that matter. It doesn't make it makes sense 100 years, but it doesn't. I don't know how to get my head around it still. I've just decided I'll just go for it.
Yeah.
And it's some things you cannot think too much. You just have to go for it. You have to dare to take that risk.
Because there are a lot of no points in this project. There's the forest of 1,000 trees. There's a room, the silent room, that's been built in a library. The project is creating a collection of works by 100 writers over 100 years. At some point in 2114, the forest will be cut down and there will be a book made from the paper from the trees. And on top of all of that, you've now got an agreement with the city of Oslo to look after this project for 100 years.
Don't tell them.
Have there been points in the last 10 to 12 years where you've thought, this is not going to happen? Or once you got that initial buy-in for the land, for the forest, did everything feel possible?
Oh, it's, I'm not, I often think, it's becoming a very big responsibility, because a lot of people around the world resonate with the work. We could never dream that this could happen. So for me personally, it's a growing responsibility, and I must say it's heavy also. So it makes me going, but it's also worrying, because of course there's lots of things that can happen. I mean, there's so much uncertainty in the world. We can just think of what has happened the last 3 years around us. And so what really, this is of course very personal, but for me personally, I think despite all the instability, this to just keep on doing a work as a ritual creates stability, even though there's so much uncertainty. So it's become a life-changing project, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So I cannot give up. It's too much to carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, you will have to give it up.
Yeah,
and pass it on.
I'll die.
And pass it on to the next
But Katie doesn't want me to die.
Right.
So, because every time we talk about that, she said, no.
Maybe she'll come up with the solution for you.
Maybe we will.
And keep on going. One of the things that Katie has said about the project, and if you haven't discovered Katie Paterson's work, please go online and have a look. She has done some extraordinary things. She's recorded the sound of a glacier breaking off a glacier for people to phone in and listen to. She's mapped the dying stars. She really approaches the world in a unique way, I think. And the projects do sound like wild ideas to begin with, and then she makes them happen. She's described the core of Future Library as time and longevity, but also hope and rituals. So I wonder if you can take us through a year in the project and talk to us about some of the rituals that have grown up as the project has developed.
Yeah, that is it, the most important ritual. So Elif Shafak and me, I'm getting older, so yeah, that's part of it too. It's part of the concept. So Katie is a conceptual artist, so of course there are different elements that makes this work. And one of the parts is the ritual itself, which is the handing over the manuscript. And so the contract with the authors is that they have to come to Oslo, and they have to walk in the footsteps of the previous authors into the forest, and where this image is that's showed behind me here. And that's in the forest, that's where the handing over happens. Being Norwegian, coming from the forest, I thought that this was not important to the authors, honestly. So during COVID, I don't know if you remember that we turned red and green and all these kind of things were locking down. And Karl Ove Knausgård, he's a Norwegian author, and he was the one that was supposed to come for the handover that spring. And he lives in London, and then, suddenly London turned red, and then Oslo turned red, and we couldn't travel, and we couldn't go, and we had made a plan B, which we all did, digital plan B.
Yeah.
And I wrote to Karl Ove Knausgård. I said, I'm sorry, COVID is making it impossible. We'll now do the plan B, the digital. And he had agreed. And it's not a big administration, so it's a heavy load of work for a few of us to make this happen. And then 3 days before it was going to happen, and I was going to go to the forest for him, he wrote me and said, "Dear Anne Beate, I have to walk myself." At first I panicked, but he taught me, first of all, he also taught me for the authors, it's the process of walking, the ritual itself, which was important, to be in that forest and being part of that shared experience and feeling of having something in common, which was important. So he taught me, he wrote back and he said, we have to take life as it comes. So that's why we are totally relaxed now if authors are delayed, because they have to come. That's much more important. But coming from a forest, I always think every time I take people to the forest, I'm thinking, oh, it's just another forest. Because, it is really just another forest, so but it's become a sacred place, actually.
It's become imbued with a whole lot of meaning and community. How are the authors chosen, selected, and how did you manage to have Margaret Atwood as your first author? She seems now, looking back, it's like, who else would you actually ask? Someone who'd grown up in the Canadian forest, who understood words and imagination and time and all the touch points that this project offers.
First of all, there's a trust. So the organization with the trust is set up. I did that in 2014. Because that's like, you need to have that kind of a body to look after the work for 100 years. And that's, at least in the future, it will be independent of both the artist and me. So we have a board, and the trustees, we select an author every year. And that's a very slow process. So we have only 2 criteria, that's imagination and time. But that's for all authors, so that makes a direction. But we sit down and but the first year we had a long list, and we thought we could start on the top, and then every year we can take the next one, as if it's a linear process. It's not linear. It's extremely organic. And so we understood already after the first year that when we wanted to select a new one, it's like everything needs to be reconfigured in a way. It's a new decision every time, but still it's very slow since it's once a year. Okay, Margaret Atwood, that in 2014 we had no idea how this was going to unfold. Well, there was an idea, but we had no proof that it was going to happen. So I don't really remember why we dared to ask her. And this was before The Handmaid's Tale. Remember, after The Handmaid's Tale, she's become a rock star with bodyguards. She's 88 or something. But what was fantastic is that it took her, I think, 2 days to respond. So she just got it immediately. She just said yes, as a gut feeling. And what was really great to have her on board was that from the beginning is that she, for instance, she wrote me an email. She said, I want this to be periscoped. I said, what? Periscoped? Because, and then she said, on South by Southwest, which is a big conference in Austin, tech conference, they had launched this application, I don't know if you used that word that time, that could real-time stream events. It's called Periscope. Today, we have lots of apps like that, but she loves tech, so she knew what had happened on that. So that made a problem for me. So I had to find out what is Periscope, and then stream the first event. But because of her, we got the idea to stream every year, so it's accessible for everyone around the world to watch.
And you're streaming from a forest, which adds another degree of difficulty to the streaming process as well.
Yes, but I managed. And also she has a lot of meaning about the forest, because her parents, were scientists, and she grew up in the forest. So she was also very concerned that don't introduce any new species. So we listened to her. She was a very strong advice on a lot of things. And the first year, I think most of the journalists asking about this project were asking us, will there be books in 100 years? As if the digital books will take over. No journalists ask that question anymore. But Margaret Atwood said from the very beginning, it's a hopeful project. That at the core of the work is hope. So she got it from the very beginning. Being very dystopian, famous for being that. Yeah. So she's not actually, and she's taught me something very important, because she talks about practical utopias. She says visions are too far. What we need today are practical utopias, because they are within reach. And I think this is a driving force for me too, that we have to dream or imagine and create tomorrow. We can't wait. Let's create practical utopias.
That links into something else I've heard you say, which is that we need to learn to be great ancestors. How has this project shaped your thinking about what it is that we're leaving the future generations?
Yeah, then I can become quite emotional. Yeah. Now, I grew up on a farm. I have the name of the farm, Hovind. You're from Australia, but this is a Viking farm. HOV is an offer place. And the name of the farm is that name, and the name of the hill. So I'm 14 generations on that farm. So I had totally, when my father died very young, I was entitled to have the farm, but I decided not to become a farmer. I left and got an education and all that. And I kind of totally forgot about, or I thought everything I'd learned on the farm with forestry and all that, because I worked a lot on the farm, it was useless, all that knowledge. But through this work, I've learned it's crucial. Mm-hmm. And I think I understand that there is only 2 generations that have left that long-term thinking. So we are trapped in the short-termism. And the long-termism entitles cross-generational projects. And I think it's so important now to take that back, because it's urgent, but we need to think long-term to deal with the problems we're in. So I think despite everything, what's happening, and the speed of everything today, we need to invest in the future that are beyond my life or your life, but it really requires generations to fulfill them. So it's called so-called cathedral thinking, for instance. Yeah.
So as you've been talking about Future Library around the world, and this year in particular, I know you've been doing a lot of travel. Have you got a sense that people are starting to understand the need to go back to long-term thinking, or do you feel like you're still a bit of a voice in the wilderness? Maybe not the wilderness, but you're a lone voice and waiting for people to catch up with this idea.
Yeah, but I think if there is any criticism about the work, it really is not a lot. I have, at least people haven't told me, it's really about this. Well, why should we care for work that is not, the text? Why, they are provoked by the fact that they cannot read the text. But this is about. It's not about instant gratification. It's about actually waiting in patience and leaving something for the next generation. And I think my experience is that most people today are longing for that. And I think that's why it resonates with people in all over the world, despite, across generations, across borders, across ethnicities, religions. It really proves that there is something we have in common, that we share, that is about being a human being, And I think a lot of people are worried. And to have that direction in, that this triggers is not the answer, but it opens up for these kind of questions and reflections.
Is that one of the surprises of the project for you, that something that started out being for a city in Norway has actually become a global connector?
Yeah, we couldn't see that, no.
Yeah.
And it's not a linear, like Katie couldn't, I'm going to create a work. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
We had no idea. I'm as surprised every day as everyone else. And I feel so humbled and grateful, but also responsible.
When you first encounter the project, at least in my experience of it, you focus on the end point, that there will be 100 writers and 100 years, and eventually there will be a book. But something Katie Paterson said in a TED talk really resonated with me, where she said where the artwork takes place is in the imagination of the visitors. And the visitors have started coming since day one. When you think about the project, are you focused on Future Library's endpoint, or are you focusing on the experience that's happening now, 2 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, yesterday?
I'm worried, so I not often think about the endpoint. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy I'm in the process. I can imagine the endpoint because I think I will have at least great-grandchildren there, and I can imagine them as I can read all letters that are 100 years old that I have from my great-grandfather to his son that I've accidentally found. Is such a gift. And then I can imagine then my great-grandchildren being present when all this happens, I think they'll be proud, maybe, that, my great-grandmother was part of this. That's easy, but I'm one of the worried ones. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, the comfort and the beauty is in the process. And so that's what's the driving force, to make this happen every year. I honestly think only 1 year at a time. Yeah. Because I have all the worries, practicalities too. So yeah, but I really think this is what makes me going, to have this to one step at a time, one brick at a time. It's a way to deal with it, right? Mm-hmm. Also with uncertainty.
Shall we talk a little bit about the secret room? What you're seeing in the images behind us are beautiful moments in the life of Future Library. And you've probably already seen the incredibly gorgeous room that's now in the main public library in Oslo. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that and how it came to be and why it's there?
Yeah, it's we had to have a place to have the texts. So, but that was part of Katie's idea, to have this kind of silent room. And it's a longer story how we got it right there. It's also about knowledge about construction business, because I work in the construction business. So I had made a contract with the architects on this library, believe it or not. And I knew that on the 5th floor, there was already programmed a silent room. And I thought, it's very hard to get these kind of spaces. So I asked the construction business, in the construction project, why can't we have this space? We will make the interior, and it won't cost you anything. I'll pay for it, as long as we get, and it will still be a silent room. That's clever, so don't tell them. And so, that is on the 5th floor, and the interior is made out of the wood that we cut, that was ready to be cut before we planted 1,000 new trees. Mm-hmm. And it's carefully designed by the artists and the architects of the library. And to fit those 100 boxes and these 100 rings, and it looks very big, but it's not so big. But it's a beautiful space where youngsters like to hang out. That said, too. But also, I was there just before I went here, and it's crazy amazing how many people visit the room from all over the world. But the library itself is also fantastic. It's the most diverse public space, safe space in Oslo. And it's become, I'm so proud of that public library. And it's so generous. It's the images you see too. It's fantastic public space.
One to add to our library tourism bucket lists, I think.
Yeah. It's really library tourism.
When the writers hand over their work to you, are you ever tempted to take a look?
No comments, no. Not really, but you just saw Hong Kong from Korea. She got the Nobel Literature Prize 2 years ago, but she was ours 7 years ago. And she dragged that white cloth. She performed. It was fantastic and very emotional. The thing is that some authors are very organized, like Margaret Atwood. And she has printed her text, 2 copies. We have 2 copies. And everything is ready, but that doesn't come for all of them. And so Hong Kong, she hadn't printed her manuscript. So, and we actually stayed in a cabin one night. There's a beautiful cabin very close to the forest, and we stayed there one night. And there's no shower or no electricity, so it's very simple. And then she had needed a shower, and so I have a printer in my basement. So that manuscript is actually printed in my basement while she took a shower. Don't tell everyone, but it's in South Korean. So I actually saw it, but I couldn't read a word.
So there's no requirement on them to write in a particular language.
No.
And that has opened up the possibility of the future library also playing a role in language preservation. And Sean, the Icelandic poet, has spoken about that in relation to his language. I know that you have a printing press as part of the collection that is the future library, to be able to train people how to print the books when the time comes. Have you thought about having language-based dictionaries so that if there is a need to translate or to recover a language, some of those materials are available for those who are running the project in the future?
But if you think back, what do we know about 100 years ago? We have all that. So there will be dictionaries. So I'm not so worried about. I think the oral part of it, that worries me, that people will stop talking Icelandic or Norwegian for that sake. We're only 5 million people too. So that, because like young people, I know they prioritize to learn English instead of Norwegian, for instance. And that's like, what? You need to know your mother tongue. So I'm not so worried about but I think it's very important. I think it's extremely important to conserve and take care of and document. And I'm very worried about digital archives, because I think we need to have physical archives, honestly. And archivism should be a discipline more and more, also amongst ordinary people. I think I'm worried about it. I want to leave something physical behind because digital thing will disappear, and it can disappear like that. So I think that is one thing about it. But I think the discussion it opened with Sean, since he's from Iceland, and is a representation of threatened languages. So the discussion around this work opened up for. And that has happened to a lot of themes that we didn't foresee, of course. We had no idea. But it's also now become a discussion on representation of countries.
Yeah.
Oh, don't mention Australia and authors now. Because, and of course, this has become a question now because it's understood and read as a global project. So it's really more about representation of threatened languages or whatever. Yeah.
We will go to questions from you all very shortly. So start thinking about which Australian authors you might like to nominate while you've got the chance.
I'll take notes.
The idea of the library has been kind of mulling over in my brain a little bit. And one of the things that I wonder if Katie Paterson has created is a library that encompasses all the parts of the project. It encompasses the forest that then becomes the paper, the manuscripts, the collection, the room, the book. The library is the overarching concept. When you've been talking to her about it, what have you talked about the idea of why a library? Why was that the name that she chose to give it?
I'm not sure. I know where it all started for her. And that was tree rings. She was drawing tree rings. And she has, Katie has a brain, I don't understand how it works, honestly. She creates ideas. Like she could go away for some days and then come back with 3,000 ideas. I don't know how, I have no idea. And I'm not gonna take on all that work, for sure. So only one of them. So she's publishing books with her ideas. So there's one page that is this idea. I don't think she can explain how her ideas happens. I don't think it works that way for her.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've ever talked about it, actually. I just accepted it, I guess, as a concept when she proposed it. And I was more concerned of getting her to that forest, to stay there. And that she wanted to stay there by herself. There are wolves and bears in that forest. We have that kind of animals.
We might bring the lights up, and Jordan and Renee have got microphones. So if you would like to ask a question, pop your hand up so we can get the microphone to you. For those of you who are listening online, I'm sure you can drop a question in the chat and we'll try and capture that as well too. While people are being shy and thinking about their first question, how can we become involved, apart from visiting the forest and the silent room in Norway? Are there ways for us to become involved in Future Library?
I can talk about what my dream is.
Yeah.
It's actually to create your own rituals where you live. It would be wonderful if you could invite people over, maybe a book club or friends, and have a meal, because it's a very perfect timing, 8 hours difference. You could have an evening meal while we are in the forest, and you could watch it together, for instance. And I believe in the learning from Future Library is not to copy the work or, but to start thinking in a different way around long-term thinking yourself, and to become that why not person, if I could put it that way, to be open-minded and to believe in crazy things and taking risks for a better future and wanting something, wanting a direction. So for me, that is the most important. If it can inspire for that would be the best. But really, I would love to have you all there for the streaming.
On the 28th
28th
of June?
and this year there are two authors. It's Tommy Orange, he's Native American, and he's delayed a year, and it's Amitav Ghosh from India, and they will both go together into the forest and hand it over. So you can be there. It's all streamed both, and then after we've been in the forest, we go to the library. So that is also streamed, and there will be they will put the manuscript in, and there will be an conversation with the authors. You're very welcome to come, because we don't believe in everyone coming to Norway. You know, it's very far. I'm not sure if I can recommend it even. But if you come, you can tell me, because we really like to know if people come. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you.
question. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Is that working? Yes, good. That was beautiful and hopeful, and it was very fascinating. I was just speaking of the handover ceremony. I was just wondering if you could tell us more about who are the people that come and what kind of things do you do at the ceremony. I've been fascinated to watch the images.
Yeah. You have to meet up at 10 o'clock at this specific space outside the forest. It's the end stop of the subway. So you take the subway together. So the first subway Sunday morning is very crowded. It's usually not. And then you walk together to the specific starting point, and that's where you all gather. And we start walking together. And it takes about 30 minutes, and it's an easy walk or hike. And we gather in the forest, like you could see on these images. It's a very simple ritual. I'm the master of ceremony. I greet everyone. People are sitting down on the ground. There's nothing special. It's just an author bench. Everyone else is sitting on the ground, so you have to take a sitting mat and stuff. And it's very egalitarian. You know, we're all alike. And we have the forester. He's the most popular man because he talks about the forest and people love it. And like, for instance, 2 years ago, we added pine trees to make the forest more resilient, because a diverse forest is more sustainable and resilient. And then the authors can tell us the title, and they are also invited to read something, not the manuscript. And then actually there will be a performance. I can tell you now that it's a Sami performer this time for Tommy Orange. And then we just are totally silent together for a minute, and we leave. It's beautiful, very simple. It can rain and it can be sunny. Anything can happen, but that's it. It's very simple.
Thank you. We've got another question.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That's such an inspirational project that you're working on, so thank you for sharing. I have two questions. The first one is, if you wanted to participate or be on that walk, how do you go about doing that? And then the second question, I'm very curious, like, how do you preserve the manuscript or the paper for that long? Because even my diaries, I look into it and the ink disappears. So I'm curious to understand that process as well.
So it's a public event. It's open and free. And the most important for the work is that it's happening. So we don't have the need having to count people, like we need as many as possible. That's not our driving force. Our driving force is to have a sustainable amount of people, but people from all over the world come. So anyone can show up. We never know who will show up. But throughout the years, there has been people coming regularly, taking kids, grandchildren, family, friends. So it's organically we're growing kind of crowd. And really very different people, and so it's easy access to go there. You can also volunteer. It's not much to do to make these sawdust arrows and greet people, but people like to volunteer, which is fantastic. So people sign up from all over the world now too, because we had like an open call, and then they come to Oslo, and we have a special meal on Saturday before the event, and together, and we prepare the booklets. We have some booklets here, you can show them, that we hand out, that we also make every year. We commission an essayist to write an essay, and then we print these beautiful booklets, and we hand them out. So it's so we try to greet and to keep the work extremely grounded and for everyone. So if you come, you have to email me. And if you email Future Library, it's me anyway. It's not a big administration at all. So it's extremely grounded. Paper, we were very worried. So we told Margaret Atwood, you have to take a memory stick. And then 2 years after, we were like, who remembers floppy disk? Let's forget about it. So archivists says, and conservators say paper is the best thing. So it's 2 copies. We stopped the digital part. So there are 2 copies, one in the room and one in the bunker in the city archive. So we have 2 only. And I'm not worried about, it's printed on archival paper. So it's, laser print on archival paper. So we had a project on archivism, how to conserve the work. And then, of course, all the material part is easy because it's physical. So it's easy to archive. But for me, the worry is really all the intangible parts of the work, which is, I feel, it feels enormous, and I don't know how to conserve it. I've started a dialogue now with someone that are specialists on this, that would like to take it on. So maybe we find a solution. So it's still working on the project, as you can see. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Hi.
Thank you for taking time to share. What an amazing journey, wild but beautiful. And I'm glad that I came because now I understand it a lot better. I had a question about how you source who your authors are going to be. So when you were talking earlier, you mentioned having a list and how the board sort of sits in the trust. They sit and they work through and try and figure out who's going to be the one for this year. How did you come up with that list? Are you open to suggestions? I'm from Zimbabwe, and I'm so proud to see Tsitsi Dangarembwa on the list. So I'm so fascinated by how you got to that sort of like process. And are you open to suggestions for more authors? And how do we let you know what those suggestions are, if you're open to this?
We totally depend on that, because we're not the Nobel. We're not the Booker Prize. We don't have the resources to do lots of research. And it is a problem, and we know that it is a problem that we are Anglo, all of us. So to really understand other languages, to be the representation is a big issue for us. So we totally depend on nominations, and we want nominations, and we don't have a fixed list. Like I said, that even the first year that became a mess, so it didn't work. And so it's very organic. So yes, please nominate. But Tsitsi was easy because she writes in English, so we could understand. I even met her in 1994 already, so that was fun. Tsitsi Dangarembwa, for the ones that don't know, fantastic author. And there was one more question, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm up.
How do we let you know?
Oh, but let me email. It comes to me, all the emails. Any address will get to me.
I'll also make work for the National Library team, because at the end of this, you will receive a survey, and if you wanted to add a suggestion to the survey form, they could probably pass it on to Beate as well.
And to follow the work, people come to Norway and think they will meet a big administration. It's me. So, and a couple of others during handover. It's not, and for us, it's not sustainable to be alone as long as the work, when it grows, but still, this is part of the work. It's extremely grounded and egalitarian, but that does mean I don't have a communication budget or people that are doing all this social media stuff, and so we're doing that ourselves. And so, but we are on Instagram, and that's where we do updates, and Facebook, and our webpage is very beautiful. If you haven't been there and watched it, it's very beautiful, but it's made for 100 years. So they have won prizes, the designers, but it doesn't work when it comes to news, if you understand what I mean. So, but it's going to last for 100 years, so that's why it's set up as it is. But please nominate. And I'm really happy to get emails. Yeah.
It's a wonderful resource, the website. All of these lovely programs are there, so you can read what the writer's been saying and the essays about them. And it's now a book club as well, with some resources. So if you're part of a book club, you can encourage your friends and readers to join in and read the work of the writers, even though you can't read the work that we all want to read in 2114.
And meet Katie and me by the end of the process. So we started that 2 years ago to have book clubs around the world to read books and the reading list, and then we offer them an online book club with Katie and me afterwards. So yeah, we're trying to find ways, because people really want to engage. And really, if you have any ideas we should take on, we're really open, because it's growing as we talk. If you understand what I mean, we are learning and growing and adding things, and very open for our suggestions.
It's not just the forest that's growing.
No. Oh, yeah.
We've got another question. Oh, hello.
We'll go here first, and then
Okay. Thank you for sharing this extraordinary project. And at the risk of increasing your anxieties about the sustainability of the project, I've got two questions. I guess the first one is, I'm curious about, you've referred to yourself as someone who works in the construction industry with a farming background. So I guess I don't really understand how you come to work for this project. And then I guess where you will find another you to continue the project. And I guess the other thing is that plays on my mind, I see the photograph of the very beautiful library very close to the edge of the water. Yeah. And as someone who's worked in a lot of cultural organisations, many of which are near water, and knowing about some of the terrible things that have happened to some of those in terms of flooding and so on, I guess I'm just really interested in what thoughts you've had about the sustainability of the library building and its room. Fifth floor, that's handy, but nevertheless.
Yeah, so the problem, and this is a problem, right? So, because which buildings last for 100 years is one thing, and which buildings remain libraries for 100 years, because they will change the programming, right, in buildings. So I know all these kind of things, Boris, yeah. But I've been thinking, well, it's on the 5th floor, yeah? The ocean will not that much. Okay, so that's one thing. And then coming from the construction business, I also thinking about fire problems, for instance. So I was actually on the stage giving a talk when I got a text message, is a fire in the library. Some youngsters had lit a sofa or something. The problem is not the fire, the problem is the water. Yeah? So I just asked, what floor? 4th. Okay, I don't care. The water is going down. So this is, it is, so if I worry about this, it's not going to happen. Because there's so many things that is at play when it comes to, will that building still be a library? Will they renovate it and all that? But I think the trust need to negotiate that room, because I have a contract, 100-year contract with the municipality who owns the library, that they will maintain that room even in that. So I think that if something happens, and anything can happen, you need to find solutions as the trust, the boards. But I think I have to trust the trustees for them to find good solutions. And then I think that will become part of this story, actually. So I'm quite relaxed if I don't start thinking about it. But so I get very, if you see, there was another question too, wasn't it?
Yes, I was just wondering how the trustees will
me?
find another you. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Katie's going to come up with a solution so that we can clone or extend Anna Beate to always be there.
No, but there are more people. That's why I feel like I'm kind of on a mission to the why not people, and to increase the why not culture, and to increase engagement and optimism, or also to commitments, because this is something we all are longing for, I think. So I think it's not so hard. It might be hard at the moment, but I'm still young. No, I'm still not so old. Yeah.
Yeah. And our last question, I think, might be lucky last.
Also, just want to say thank you for committing to the project and for convincing the developers to take it on. And also, just wanted to add to that idea of the story continuing. I think that's a beautiful part of it, is that you don't know how it's going to develop over time. And so it's actually quite exciting to think that anything could be thrown at it and that will organically then develop it over time. My question was related to the authors as well. I was wondering whether you give a brief to the authors when you choose them. Is it work that they're already engaging in that they submit? They just choose anything? And like how long before they then submit it? Are they given time? And yeah, I think that was all.
Usually we commission during the summer. So, and until now we have a collaboration with the Edinburgh Book Festival, because Katie is from Fife outside Edinburgh. So we have we have had the announcement there some years. So that's when they start, and then they come to Oslo in the spring, in June, May, June. So it's a little bit less than a year for them. We don't give them any brief. We give them total freedom. They can, Margaret Atwood says it's my grocery list. Of course, she said. But you know, it can be a poem, it can be a short, it can be a novel, it can be an essay. For us, it's not the point. They can just totally decide, and some of them love that freedom, of course. And I don't know if you know Karl Ove Knausgård's books, but he's very honest. So can you imagine him being even more honest? Then he's happy to not be alive when that is published. But remember, when we talk about the authors, that they will be dead, but also, because they like that they don't have to read the critics, for instance. It's totally free. But can you imagine the last authors?
Yeah.
It's a totally, and then you say everything around this work is growing, because the experience will change totally. The last one will carry all the authors. So when authors will talk about the work, it will change a lot for the last ones than the first ones. Yeah. So that we didn't think about that either, right? So this is something we learn along the way.
Yes, I feel sorry for authors 90 to 100 who are going to be there at the conclusion.
And get the critics.
And get the critics, that's right. That's right. That brings our evening to a conclusion. Thank you very much for your questions this evening. Thank you, Anna Beate, for being so open and sharing this wild idea with us. It is beautiful. Can you all put 28th of June in your diaries so you remember to log on and see what's happening in the forest on that day?
Maybe you can meet here.
Maybe we can meet here, Joe. See what we can make happen.
Why not? Exactly.
Why not? Yes. Yep.
Now we're talking.
Thank you, Eric, to you and to your colleagues at the Embassy for bringing this evening together and making it possible for us to sit down and talk and continue building the community of the future library in Australia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll just add to that and express a big thank you from the National Library, both to Eric and to Beate as well. It was such an amazing experience to hear about this project. I think, as someone who is so committed to libraries and their purpose, to think about libraries in a really different way and to think about libraries across time and how that might change. It's been a wonderful thing to experience. Also, thank you to you, the audience, for asking such amazing questions. Really hope that you leave tonight, with your imaginations captivated, your minds pondering what those words might be in those manuscripts. And also, travel safely tonight, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the National Library again soon, maybe on the 28th of June. Thank you.